UHF. Yep, that time that Weird Al Yankovic made a movie. And as you would imagine, it's a really crazy, hyperactive, off-the-wall and bizarre movie that dives into the depths of parody. Released in 1989, Weird Al plays down on his luck George Newman, who can't seem to hold a job despite being a visionary. That is until his Uncle Harvey puts him in charge of a TV station called UHF, where George and his friend Bob run the station and start making their own wacky and bizarre TV shows, which causes the station's popularity to grow, which leads to the rivalry from another station and a memorable telethon. In the movie that pretty much hardly anyone saw when it came out, but has increasingly become a cult hit, loved and adored by not only fans of Weird Al, but also fans of obscure comedy and satire. Yes, this movie definitely is, well, an experience, and I love it. And so do you, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video. Yep, hi guys. Today we are exploring Weird Al's movie, UHF. So I know what you're all thinking. Why am I dressed up like a sandwich? Well, because the movie we're talking about today is pretty wacky and crazy, so I wanted it to look like I was inbred. Just so I myself can be fun and wacky for you guys. Of which I know you all just absolutely love my pronunciations of words and spelling, and there's no issues whatsoever.
Can you do me a favor? Can you actually learn to spell, speak, and pronounce names? You're an embarrassment to your entire country.
Oh dear. Quick, someone get that guy a beer and a stress ball so he can calm down and relax as we check it out. Number 10, from music to movies. UHF is the brainchild of Alfred Matthew, or as he's better known as with his public persona, Weird Al Yankovic, along with his manager Jay Levy. In the late 70s and 80s, Yankovic was increasingly becoming more and more popular, thanks to his parody music career, where he would take popular songs and rework them with a comedic twist, parodying many popular acts including Michael Jackson, Queen, and Madonna, releasing many popular parodies like Eat It, Fat, and Like a Surgeon, with Weird Al becoming just as much of a musical act as the artist that he is parodying. It was 1985 that Weird Al and Levy started to think about crossing over from parodying songs to making a parody movie. The idea was the movie to have a string of parodies, making it somewhat episodic, which is where the idea of Weird Al playing a small broadcasting station guy came from, and thus the George Newman character was born. And the plan was to make UHF follow a similar template to Airplane, in which it would feature a string of sketches held together by an overall narrative. Yeah. Number 9, alternative title. So it's here we get to the unique title of UHF, which translates to Ultra High Frequency Broadcasts, which was a phenomenon that was happening in the States at the time, in which small broadcasting companies would produce very low budget TV, of which was often seen as being quirky and really off-kilter. However, there were worries that overseas viewers may not know what UHF stands for. And not coming from America myself, yeah, the term UHF isn't really a thing. In fact, I never even heard of the term till I saw the movie. So Weird Al came up with the idea of calling the movie The Vidiot. So in retaliation to that, in certain parts of the world, the movie was retitled to The Vidiot from UHF. Incidentally, Vidiot was the name of a pop culture themed Australian children's game show in the early 90s. So what do you guys think is a better title? UHF or The Vidiot from UHF? Number 8. It took several years to get UHF off the ground. So Weird Al and Jay Levy were pitching UHF around Hollywood, And it took them a whopping 3 years until things started to happen. Basically, the script ended up in the hands of producer John W. Hyde, whom had previously produced The Neverending Story, Short Circuit, and The Lost Boys, who along with a producer called Gene Kirkwood, had just started their own production company called Cinecorp. Kirkwood in particular wanted to make a movie with Weird Al, as he really liked his music videos. So Hyde and Kirkwood took UHF to Orion Pictures, home of many great masterpieces like RoboCop, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Silence of the Lambs, and, Mac and Me. Oh well, never mind. Orion were like, yeah, we'll fund the movie and get it made on the condition that the budget remains under $5 million. So after years of pitching, UHF was in production, with Weird Al starring in the movie and Jay Levy directing. Number 7. Casting possibilities. Okie dokie, when it comes to the crazy cast of UHF, we have Weird Al himself as the main lead of the down-on-his-luck visionary George Newman. And naturally the part feels like it is tailor-made for Weird Al, to the point where I often hear people say that UHF almost feels biographical. Then you got Michael Richards, who to everyone else would always be remembered as Kramer, but to me I'll always know him as the bow tie killer from Problem Child. Well, at the time of writing UHF, Weird Al was a fan of Richards' stand-up comedy, and wrote the Stanley Spadowski character for Richards. However, the part could have been less Kramer and more Doc Brown, as he used Christopher Lloyd's Iggy character from Taxi Driver as an influence when writing Stanley. So at one stage, Weird Al thought about just actually hiring Lloyd for the part, but he ultimately decided to go with Richards. But he was then told that Richards couldn't accept the offer due to suffering from the condition of Bell's palsy. But Richards did manage to pull through and give a great performance. When it came to the Terry Campbell part, several big names auditioned, including Ellen and Jennifer Tilly. But the part went to SNL star Victoria Jackson. A very young Jerry Seinfeld was being sought after for the Bob Speck character, but he didn't want to do it, so the part went to David Bowie, not to be confused with David Bowie. Both Crispin Glover and Joel Hodgson were considered for the Philo character. Joel Hodgson in particular was really in mind when writing the character, but both Glover and Hodgson turned the offer down, and so instead Anthony Geary took the part. UHF also features a young Fran Drescher long before she became the nanny, and Kevin McCarthy as AJ Fletcher, aka the You're Next guy from the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. In fact, when doing research for this episode, a common theme that I noticed when it came to a lot of the cast is that they actually wanted to be in the movie because they were fans of Weird Al. Can't blame them, I'd make a movie with him if you gave me the shot, yeah, just you try and stop me. Number 6. The Real Rambo. Okay, so it's here we get to the famous Rambo segment, where George has a dream that he becomes Rambo to save the Stanley character. It's honestly brilliant, and I remember watching it for the first time when I was a kid, and thinking, how did they do that? How did Weird Al suddenly get all buff and muscular? And it is probably the most recognisable aspect of the movie. However, at one stage during the production, Sylvester Stallone himself was actually going to appear in the movie as the Rambo-esque character. And that would have been so glorious to see Stallone himself making a parody of himself, be that one of his most well-known characters. According to Wiki, Stallone then just kind of, decided not to participate in UHF. So what do you do if you can't get Stallone? Why, you just turn Weird Al himself into Stallone. Problem solved. Speaking of other outside pop cultural influences, the George character's last name of Newman is a reference to the Mad Magazine mascot, Alfred Newman. You know that weird looking dude who keeps turning up on the covers? Yeah, him. I think it's cool basing yourself on silly oddball characters, but I personally would never do that, because I've got dignity, and I don't want to do anything that's going to make me look silly. I'm a whoopee cushion now. Number 5. Fish filming. UHF was filmed in and around Tulsa, Oklahoma. In fact, this might just be the first movie I've spoken about that was solely filmed in Oklahoma. The location was chosen for monetary reasons, as UHF's producer, Gray Frederickson, had previously worked on The Outsiders in the location, and thus he knew that filming in the state would be more cost effective. In fact, what really helped the production was a stroke of luck, as a local mall in the area had been shut down while it was being converted into offices, so the production could use the mall as sound stages. But it's here that things get a little fishy, specifically for the infamous Wheel of Fish scene. Well, in order to film that scene, they actually used real fish from a local market that a member of the crew had brought. However, the scene was filmed on a hot summer's day in a studio that had no air conditioning or ventilation, while also being filmed under hot studio lights. Yeah, wow. Apparently Weird Al would go on to call the filming of this scene as, quote, ripe, which I'm guessing is just a polite way of saying that it smelled like utter crap. Ew, I feel really bad for those people who had to work with such bad smells. And take it from me, someone who was literally dressed up as a fart. Number 4, tragedy strikes. Okay, it's here that things actually get a little sad, but I feel like it would be a disservice to not mention Trinidad Silva, apologies if I've mispronounced that, who played the role of Raul Hernandez, of which he has great comedic timing. Silva had not finished all his scenes for UHF when a terrible event occurred, as the actor sadly died in a car accident, something which greatly shocked the entire cast and crew. To complicate the issue, as mentioned, not all of his scenes were completed, so to try and come up with a resolution, there was an idea to use lookalikes and stunt doubles in order to complete the characters' scenes, but the cast and crew were just too overwhelmed with sadness and grief to do that, and thus the idea of using body doubles was dropped. But ultimately, UHF was dedicated to Silva's memory. It's sadly a really tragic chapter in an otherwise very funny movie. Rest in peace. Number 3, tie-in soundtrack. So naturally, considering the main aspect of Weird Al's act is music, he released a tie-in soundtrack for the movie, which was also called UHF, which featured a song which was also called UHF, which even got its very own music video, which of course was called UHF. However, I think my favourite song which features on the album is a rendition of Money for Nothing, only it uses lyrics from the Beverly Hillbillies theme. In fact, the track even features guitar work by Dire Straits band member Mark Knopfler, after he insisted on playing on the track. Sadly though, the album was a major disappointment for Weird Al. It is in fact his second most least successful album, of which only reached 146 on the Billboard charts. Yeah, ouch. It also got a very mixed response from critics, who felt the album was good, nothing wrong with it per se, but they further explained that this is an album that's probably only going to appeal to the fully committed Weird Al fans. So what caused this album to hit hard? Well, something that's been attributed to its failure is the fact that UHF had a real limited release, and that because of that, maybe it may have gotten some people confused as to what the album was all about. Or as Wiki puts it, lost in the shuffle. However, Weird Al's career would get revived thanks to Nirvana, where his next album, Off the Deep End, put him back on the map, so to speak, thanks largely to its Smells Like Teen Spirit parody, Smells Like Nirvana. Speaking of which, can we all just agree that the music video for Smells Like Nirvana is bloody brilliant? Seriously, that music video always makes me LOL my pants. Number 2, the Academy Award had to be redesigned. So now we come to what is another standout aspect of UHF, the Raiders of the Lost Ark parody. And upon rewatching this, I am damn near certain they somehow used the same sets from Raiders, as it looks identical. The scene has the iconic moment where George tries to get his hand not on an ancient relic, but an Academy Award. However, the design of the award had to be altered, as the Academy of Motion Pictures refused the exact likeness of an Academy Award to be used. Nope, they don't stand for such tomfoolery, but slapping Chris Rock on the other hand seems to be okay. That's why the award in question is covering its crotch, which to me makes it funnier anyway. Also during the making of UHF, director Francis Ford Coppola visited the set, as he was scouting locations for The Godfather Part 3, and the original cut of UHF clocked in at about 2.5 hours long. And many fans have asked Weird Al over the years to release the completed cut of UHF. but he has maintained that there is a reason that all that stuff was cut out. Getting back to the Raiders spoof, a lot of that footage was actually used in the marketing for UHF in order to capitalize on the then upcoming release of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which leads us to the release itself of UHF. Number 1. Cult status. So UHF was released in July 1989, and as any movie buff would know, that any movie that was released in 1989 that wasn't a franchise movie or a major studio film was just demolished. Yep, it was an absolute bloodbath, as UHF was up against big movies like Ghostbusters 2, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Lethal Weapon 2, Back to the Future 2, Karate Kid 3, License to Kill, A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, Police Academy 6, Friday the 13th 8, and of course the ever popular juggernaut Batman. So UHF sadly would only go on to make $6.1 million on its $5 million budget. Yeah, the irony is, UHF was all about making fun of the mainstream entertainment, but it seemed to have come out at a time where audiences were clearly fully invested in mainstream entertainment. The sad thing is, UHF actually did really well with its test audiences, so this was the movie that Orion was hoping would get them out of their financial slum. But it didn't, and as we all know, the company would eventually become defunct. And according to a few web pages I found, UHF kind of derailed Weird Al's career for 3 years. But thankfully, as we all know, it didn't destroy his career, as Weird Al is still rocking to this day, and is now seen as a pop cultural legend in his own right. The fact that UHF resonated with its test audiences shows that the movie had potential, and maybe if it didn't have such fierce competition, then maybe it could have fared much better in the box office. And I think that's a shame, as because of UHF's box office failings, we never really saw Weird Al's movie career take off. Who knows what kind of wacky and topsy-turvy movies that he could have gone on to make. That said though, there was that crazy spoof biopic where Weird Al was played by Harry Potter, so there's that. Bottom line is, I think UHF, and I think of the 1980s John Cusack comedy movie Better Off Dead, as to me the comedy styles in both films are actually very similar, and they both have adoring fans who love them for their zany and obscure antics, and general presentation. And UHF is a cult movie in every sense of the word. Maybe people didn't really understand it when it first came out, but it's a movie that is fully embraced now. It's one of those movies that has aged like a fine wine, with its popularity growing with the passing of time. And I think the idea of the little guy going up against a huge giant corporation is a concept that really resonates with people more now than it probably did back in '89. So if you need a cinematic sugar rush and a movie that's going to give you a fun hyperactive buzz, then please check out UHF. Or I will cry and I won't invite you over to play Scrabble. I guess UHF is kind of like my fan base. Some people just don't get it. Like that angry voice message guy at the start of the video. Whew, he was pretty annoyed. But I think that people have increasingly got on board with me as time has gone by. And to be honest, my fan base is actually pretty awesome. Like, you guys rock. For example, someone sent me this weird Jurassic Park dinosaur head mask thing. Apparently it roars. Yeah, look at that. So let's try and get this out the box and have a look at it, eh?
You're an embarrassment to your entire country.